Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 9 of Experience AV with Jim and Jeremy. We're excited to be here. We're going to be talking about leaders in AV today. But Jeremy, man, how you holding up, dude? How is everything?
Whoo! Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, Jim.
Good.
We're slightly late to the
Yep.
podcast today. This is what you get for doing it live, right? We might have had maybe a technical difficulty, but hey, we're here now.
In this show, a technical difficulty?
I know it's a totally first time, never has
Yeah.
happened before situation. So, we had to solve it, and we
I
did.
thought no, but we did it. We're here. We're live. That's part of the magic, right? Keeps the excitement popping.
Yeah, beyond that, it's actually officially winter time here in Arizona now that it's January. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
some 50-degree days and then it just like no joke yesterday popped up into the 70s and it was like, all right, we had winter for about a week and a half and now
Yeah.
we're coming out of it and getting into springtime. So, but it's gorgeous hiking weather. You're coming out soon. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yes, I'm excited.
And the only other thing in my immediate report would be super bummed that ISE got moved to May.
So bad.
I was booked, I was ready to
So bad.
go. I wanted to visit Barcelona for the first time. I was all excited to get on.
Barcelona.
That's right. Well, I don't know about all that, but I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I was
I do
excited
not.
though, man. I was excited. So super bummed that it's canceled. Only getting pushed back to May, so hopefully we can get everything flowing again for May. But other than
Yeah,
that, man, I'm good. How about you?
yeah. Things are good. I do not envy industry show people right now,
Oh,
man. They have just impossible decisions to make. It's crazy.
can
It's
you?
crazy.
Can you just take a second and imagine the amount of time, money, and effort that has gone into planning ISE, and then literally 3 weeks before the show having to make the hard decision to push it back a few more months, which we say that like it's a first time situation, but this has been the norm. This has been standard operating
Yeah,
procedure for the last couple of years. And to your point, heart goes out to the event planners trying to work
yeah,
around the craziness.
yeah. Miserable. No, with me things are good. Things are good. So we've spoke before. I'm into scouting, and it's freaking me out because my boy, my oldest, is graduating into actually full on Boy Scouts now. So he's going to be going camping on his own, hiking on his own, and that's freaking me out a little bit. Like it's
Without
becoming
you,
real. I mean, I would love to go, but I don't need to go anymore. That's the thing. In Cub Scouts, everything is like planned for them, but in Boy Scouts, they're on their own. There's like at least two leaders to make sure no one dies, but everything else is on them, man. Like if they cook for the first time and they mess it up, guess who's eating like spaghetti jello because they just cooked it too long and it's a mush.
that's
Have
awesome
fun.
though.
That's all part of the process. And I gotta
Congrat
remember those years.
Congratulations. That's a big deal,
Yeah,
man. These are
yeah.
milestone moments. So did you go through the whole Arrow of Light ceremony?
Yeah. No, not yet. That's but we're planning that now. That's why it's becoming realer and realer.
Reeler
So
and reeler.
is that a thing? It's becoming more real.
Yeah,
Right.
that's okay. Sorry, I
I
couldn't
speak
help.
English good.
I
I speak
couldn't.
American good. What?
I couldn't help myself on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's funny. I was just going through some of the old mementos from the family and came across my brother's Arrow of Light, like the actual arrow, and the sash that he got, awarded when he was going through the process. I tried to get him to put it on. He wouldn't do it. I don't understand why. That's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's good. And I thought that was interesting. Number one, because it's top of mind for me, but number two, As a scouting leader, something we are always looking for are leaders, like people to step up and take ownership, become leaders. And I thought that was, number one, I'm doing a lot of planning for it, but number two, like it linked into what we're going to be talking about today, how to grow successful AV leaders. And I wanted to ask you, like, was there one moment in your career that you can say, I did this little tiny thing and I just became an AV leader
Whoo,
in
man.
your organization, in the industry, whatever, but was there one moment where that you can pinpoint that you were like, man, I'm a leader now?
That's you could have like maybe sent me this question before the podcast so I could have prepared a response, but that's like
Live
such a
show, baby.
yeah, that's an incredible question. So, let me think about that for just a second. I would say that it maybe wasn't in the moment that I realized that a leadership thing or activity was happening. It was in that moment of looking back and going, "Oh shit, I was the one responsible for that," or I was the one responsible for those people. And that's what I think for me, it was pretty early on, I would say, when I was growing from like a technician into a lead technician, right? To where I
Yep.
had somebody that I was responsible for taking under my wing, teaching them how to do things, responsible for making sure they didn't die, kind of like your Cub Scout leaders and your Boy Scout leaders. But you kind of don't, for me anyway, I didn't necessarily realize it in the moment. It was looking back and going, whoa. I mean, usually it's like, somebody comes in the room and is like, "Hey, who's the leader? Who's responsible for this?" And usually I was like looking around at somebody else for the longest time, and then it's that kind of moment where you're like, "I don't have anybody else to turn to. I guess it's kind of me," which that's interesting too because it lends itself to the fact that leadership moments happen, even when you're not responsible for other people, but when you're taking ownership over something.
Yes. Yes. Well,
So,
and that's because as we try to keep it loose and natural here, but as I was just thinking about the topic that we're going to be discussing, one moment in my career kept on popping into my head, and it was I was working at KBI as an engineer. So I was having a great time with Jose Gonzalez. Me and him got along incredibly, having fun. We were doing, he was the CAD guy, I was the engineer, and we were just bouncing. We were having such a fun time in engineering. And then there was one project. So Scott Sasso was the director of operations, and there was one project that I was the engineer on that Scott was swamped, the PMs were swamped, and they were having some issues. And so they came back. We did a change order. I had the solution, and it was pretty straightforward. But no one could get there for 3 weeks, and at that point, I could see the exasperation, and I said, you know what, I'll take a trip out there. I'll go and I'll work with the guys in the field and we'll just get it done. And I had never done anything. I was super green still, but I feel like that is where I kind of sunk my teeth into this AV leadership thing. And it was super small, right? It was a silly little change. We just needed to switch some things around in the rack and put in a new box or whatever. So nothing crazy. But I think just taking that risk, and I was like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, clearly, or that would never have happened. Um, but but just being like, what, my director of operations needs me, my team needs me. I'm gonna step up and get this done for the team. We'll figure it out. And I think that was my moment.
that's incredible, and that lends itself right to that ownership piece, right?
Yeah,
Nobody else is going to do this. If I don't do this, it's not going to get done.
that's it.
Man, that's it's kind of leadership in a nutshell to a certain extent, right? Not
Yeah,
wait, not
yeah,
wait, not waiting for somebody else to step forward.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I
Yeah.
love that. It's interesting when we had talked about the topic for this particular show, and training and professional development, and you and I have been involved with industry training for a really long time, and it kind of was like, what are we going to talk about? Is this talking about all the cool training that's available in AV, which, if you don't know, there's incredibly cool training available in AV, which is a lot of fun. But I love the approach here that we ended up taking, which was, growing leaders. Because if you can give me a couple moments, I'd love to share a story that I had just recently experienced that was super relevant to this. And that
Yes.
story was an annual review that I had had. One of my employees gave this person their annual review, and part of our review process is, getting a self-review back from the employee where they, answer some questions about their job, what's good, what's bad, really looking for that open feedback. And this person uh, posed the question at me that was a great question, and it was, how did Jeremy go from being a technician way back in the day to a leader or an executive today? Like, what was it that allowed him to level up year after year and achieve leadership? And it set me back for a second because I was like, man, you just kind of do, and you go, and you keep
Right.
going on to the next thing. And to take that moment and think back and go, well, what was it? What was it that drove me from starting out in the industry as a technician and driving me towards that leadership type role, or a leadership type role? And during the so I had thought about it, I had prepared a response, and during this person's actual review, where we sat down and reviewed all the information together, I had also sent an email to my supervisor, to my leader, and asked the same question. And I said, hey, I was posed this. You've been with me a long time. I'd love to get your feedback on this as well. Well, of course, I did this like right at the beginning of the interview, or at the beginning of the review, instead of actually, you know, pre-front loading this and coming into the review with the information, just hoping that he might be able to send it back to me. So we get to that part of the review. We're reviewing the document where this employee provides this feedback, and I said, "Hey, you asked this question, and I really wanted to take some time and try to answer it for you." And for me, that answer was founded in training and professional development. That's where it started, right? And so I said, what I think allowed me to continue to grow myself in AV and towards leadership was kind of an unending, voracious hunger and passion for learning,
Hmm.
going and seeking knowledge in all forms, right? Going and seeking knowledge in all forms and bringing that back and applying it to my everyday job. And I was really blessed early on in my career with my leadership, really giving me the opportunity and spending the time and money on me to be able to go seek out some of the best industry training that was available, not only from, manufacturers, but also from, our industry association, Infocom, now known as Avixa, but certainly Infocom back then. Um, and it also made me realize another thing, that it wasn't just the training, although I still believe that is a big core here, and we'll I'm sure have some good dialogue around that. But it was the ability to build relationships with people in the industry, right? Especially because inevitably I was working with and learning from leaders, great
Hmm.
leaders that had been trying to solve the same challenges that we were trying to solve in that moment. And so again, how in my mind, one of the best ways that I continued to grow myself was to seek knowledge outside of the pool of people and the organization that I was in, right? Go outside your group, seek knowledge, bring that back. Build relationships with other people. Surrounding yourself with great leaders and great minds inevitably ends up rubbing off of you, and that ability to build those relationships, helps build folks that you can call on when you come up
Mhm.
against problems, right? That was one of my biggest things in this particular arena. I have my favorite quote in the world, right? It is, if I can see far, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And that is for me so important because I am where I am today because I've had an amazing set of mentors that have helped me along the path, that have course corrected, that have been there to point me in the right direction when I didn't know where to go, right? And the point is 9 times out of 10, AV doesn't matter if this is AV, right? It could be anything. If you
Yeah,
have a
for sure.
challenge you're trying to learn, it's almost a guarantee, almost, I'm going to say, unless you're like Elon Musk, but it's almost a guarantee that someone else has been trying to solve for what you're trying to solve for. And going and seeking knowledge from those that came before and building upon that and starting from that foundation, I think is absolutely an answer to that question for me. So to just completely tie off on the question, middle of the interview, middle of the review, I get an email back from my supervisor, and he had answered the question, and it was really quite satisfying in that he took the time to say, I took some time to think about this, and I would say that probably the thing that is the most impactful is your unending desire for learning, right? And it was so wonderful to read that because, again, it was another opinion on the same question, coming back to that seeking of knowledge moment. That constant seeking of knowledge is so critical, at least for me, in my trajectory and in my career.
I love that. I love that. But I have to ask because there are a lot of people who love learning and they just soak up all that knowledge and they become like experts and masters at what they do and they just keep on learning and do their craft and learn and do their craft. But I'm curious, and this is something I want to ask you. Do you think it's your love of learning that made you the leader you are, or your love of teaching? Because to teach, you really have to learn the stuff first, right? And even if you think you understand something, when you have to explain it to someone else, you got to go back to the basics and make sure you have a big understanding of it. And then I know you love to teach, and I have to wonder if it might be like a chicken or the egg thing, but I have to wonder if it's the love of learning or the love of teaching that would make you the leader you are today.
Man, you are coming with just excellent questions. And no prep. You're giving me no prep time on any of
Right, man.
this, which I love you
Sweat,
for. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when you're young and you know everything,
of course.
right? Because we all knew everything when we were,
Of course.
17, 18, 19. You don't know what it means to be a teacher yet, right? You
Yes.
just you just don't know what it means
Yes.
to be a teacher. So it starts with learning. Even if you love teaching, right? How can you love teaching without love learning? That's where the spark
100.
comes. But then this comes back to a comment I was making earlier, right? Those mentors in your life doesn't have to be necessarily instructor. Could be a supervisor, could be just a coworker or a friend that help you get over something or help you learn something or helped you open your mind to an idea that you weren't able to maybe get to on your own. Those mentors,
Yeah.
those inspirations in our life, and that's the word I'll use. And it's certainly in the classroom, and I've taken a lot of training, just like I know you have, right? That have been in the classroom a lot, especially in the AV classroom. There's been so many aha moments, so many moments
Yes.
of inspiration where you're like, wow, that was a huge breakthrough. That's
Yep.
going to be something that I can take home, put in my pocket, and it's going to make me better at whatever I'm doing. So the moment for me to become wanting to become a teacher, right? It took a lot of learning to even feel like you could get to the confidence level of like, why would you want to learn from me? There's got to be somebody, kind of back to like,
Yes.
I'm not the leader in the room. Somebody else
Yes,
is responsible
exactly.
for doing that
Uh,
stuff, right? So
exactly.
you don't at least for me it wasn't like, you know what, I want to go be a teacher, like that's my thing, I'm gonna go get smart enough to where people are gonna listen to me. No, it was naturally occurring, and
Yeah.
to where you looked back and go, wow. And what really drives me from a teaching perspective, I still don't even know if I'm actually answering your question, but I don't care. I'm telling the story that I wanted to tell around this, which is that moment of inspiration that you've gotten so many times from people that have taught you something. It became a selfish desire to want to give that to other people.
100%.
And it felt almost like I owed it to the industry because there were so many people that gave me those moments. There were so many people that I knew were volunteer instructors. They weren't even paid to be there, right? Giving me these aha moments, building me up and giving me their experience that came before and having those inspiring moments that if there was just a chance, if there was one chance that I could give that to somebody else, it was my responsibility to do so. It was my way of paying back all of those moments that the industry has given to me and that learning has given to me.
Yeah.
So, coming back to that concept of leadership, yeah, I mean, I never sought to be a leader. I think for me personally, that's where it starts. I didn't go seeking this, and I'm about to quote Dune for the Dune lovers out there, right? The new movie. Anybody seen the new Dune? Have you seen the new Dune?
Of course.
How about the soundtrack? Holy cow.
I gotta
Amazing.
watch it again. All
You
right.
do you do need to watch it again.
All right.
Anyway, there's a great quote in that movie, and I've used it on my son, who he then laughed at me because he's like, "Are you literally quoting Dune right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am quoting Dune right now, right?" And it was, great leaders don't go seeking leadership; they are called to it. I
That's
didn't,
good.
I didn't go seeking leadership, right? And yet, when the opportunity presented itself, I might have hem and hawed a few times, but ultimately, I took the proverbial bull by the horns.
Do you know that's ringing with me so much because I feel like, especially in like the motivational speaker market, there are a lot of faux leaders, who they they never led. They speak an incredible game, but it's all fluff, and then you go to someone who's like humble, who's seen everything, and then that's the guy, and there's a slight difference in the confidence level where, like, I don't know, but I know exactly. I love that. I love that people are called to leadership. They don't go seeking it. I think that's fantastic. And to me, anyway, in my brain, I think that's the difference between a typical leader and a great leader.
And please understand, I am not at all referring to myself as a great leader. I can't
I'll
even look at,
refer to you as a great leader.
well,
That's no trouble.
I
That's
mean,
no trouble.
I appreciate the sentiment, right? But that's part of the story here, right? Like leaders don't see themselves, great leaders don't generally
Yes.
see themselves as great leaders. That's part of the humility that comes with it. I mean, and one of the things that ties it back to training and professional development for me was as leadership opportunities became available to me within my organization, whatever organization I was with at that time, I never felt like I was ready to take on the role until I went and sought out knowledge and education from other people that were trying to solve that. For example, like early on, small company is like, okay, we need to learn project management. Like, you want me to take over project management? I, okay, how can I confidently lead project managers if I don't feel like I have the experience or I have the knowledge, right? Sure, you can fake it till you make it. That's a very common,
Mhm.
leadership trait for sure. But no, for me, it was like, okay, I need to go learn. I need to go learn. I need to go gain knowledge. I need to stand on the shoulders of other giants, right, that have come before me. So shout out to Brad Malone. For those of you who know Brad Malone, Brad
Navigate
was
consulting,
uh,
absolutely.
big time. Brad was that aha moment for me when it came to project management. And I did a 3-day course at Infocom, an unfortunate number of years ago at this point. And I remember coming home from that class just mind blown, absolute mind blown, inspired to come back and just build processes that were going to take us into the future from a project management standpoint. And so on and so forth. And that's how it went for me. I was fortunate enough in my organization to be able to get an opportunity to run multiple different divisions until I ultimately landed into, kind of an overall overseeing position from an operations perspective. But at one point, I had to go run our engineering division and lead our engineering division. Here it is again. It's like, okay, how am I supposed to I don't even know how to use AutoCAD. Like I hear that's a thing. Right? And I always, for me, the some of the best leaders in my life were the leaders that led by example, right? They weren't the ones that just said, "Hey, go do this." They were the ones
Yeah.
that had already done it or knew how to do the job that they were asking you to do, and that resonated with me. So that's always been my personal leadership style, which is to go learn, don't be afraid to go do the job that you're asking somebody else to do. And so I,
Yes.
I went and took AutoCAD classes and I learned how to do AutoCAD and I built our engineering standard early on. It is so much better and further evolved today, all these years later, than it was, but we had to start from somewhere. And, I went and got my CTSD. That was my big thing, was like, if I'm going to be an engineering manager, I got to go get my CTSD. That's, Paul Streffen, um, um, Mr. And I'm going to pronounce his last name correctly tonight. I know he's not on listening, but it's Mr. Care, not Kerr, Mr. Care, right? Those guys took me through the 9-day boot camp that they used to hold at Infocom.
That's right.
Nine solid days of like design engineering and design your own stuff. I mean, oh, so long story short, right? That's one of the reasons that for me leadership gets tied so much back to knowledge and learning and gaining
Yeah.
knowledge and seeking knowledge outside of yourself and outside of your organization.
Yeah. And so you hit on two things for me. Number one, I find that people who are going to be great leaders always stay humble, whether it be AV, martial arts, really anything that you become a master at. I feel like the greats are always humble about it, and there's always more to learn. You can always get better. You can always learn from other people. You can always learn from other trades and other industries, and I think so, not so much teaching, but learning, just wanting to gather that information to make you better at your craft definitely makes you a great leader. Um, but there's also, especially in our industry, it is so easy to kind of get stuck in your silo and just used to how you do things, used to your team and used to your region or your department. But I find that great leaders network and rub elbows, and they have that network of peers that they can learn from, get information from, and just almost like broaden their horizon. And so I feel like that's another component of being a great leader is belonging to an organization that recognizes that and um, fosters sharing, right? Because that learning from that network and not being scared to share information with that network, I find makes a, a, a great leader. And a lot of organizations have the misconception that the way they do things is so unique and they're the only people who are doing it that way, and oh, they have the best. And I think that's a mistake because it's going to slow them down and it's going to keep them small. Whereas the great leaders are like, you know what, we're all in this together. We're all going to do a great job together. So I'm not afraid to share because that's what it's about. And if I share, I'm going to get way more back than I share. And I feel like that's the same thing with teaching, right? Whenever I teach a class, um, yeah, I'm kind of guiding the discussion and guiding the presentation, but I'm getting way more back from the students, either in, you know, forcing me to explain something new. I have to rethink about it. I have to relearn it on the fly and then spit it out of my mouth, which is I'm so thankful for that. Or, I'm getting up there in the industry. I don't have white hair yet, so I'm not at that stage, but I've been in it. But as a class, one of my favorite things is always counting the years of experience in the classroom. And it is way more than the years I have in the industry. And so just being open to that, just learning from the experience of the class, that's now I'm growing, in the front of it and being open to that. I think that's definitely another key to being a leader is recognizing your you, and that there is this huge pond around you. I'm kind of getting hints of like the pale blue dot scene from was that Asimov or Sagan, or I forget which one, but Sagan, Carl Sagan. And so the idea is we think we're everything, right? But when Voyager went out and took the last picture it could of the Earth, which was just this pale blue dot, it's like, dude, the entire Earth, everyone who has ever lived and has ever died and has ever existed is just on this little pale blue dot, in this huge mass. And I see that in leaders. If you recognize that you are just this little fish, even if you're a big fish in a really big pond, you're not everything. And there's still a ton to learn from. And just taking a peek at what else is going on in the world, and being open to that, being receptive to that, I think makes you a really good leader.
Man, you took a journey there, and I loved
Yeah.
it because I have found personally that leadership a practice and an exercise in humility, right? To the point that you made. Just like as we get older, and I referenced back to, being 18 and 19 and then thinking I knew everything. And, here I am a few more years than that now. And certainly knowing more than I knew at 18 or 19, but there's one really big fundamental thing that I know now that I didn't know then, which is just precisely how much I don't know. And that humbling moment of realizing that no matter what you do, you're never going to be able to learn it all. You're never going to be able to consume it all. You can only just seek and make the best of it that you can. That it's an exercise in vulnerability. You've touched on a couple things I wanted to discuss, like that sharing of knowledge amongst peer leaders, especially, when you're talking about like business owners specifically and business principles, when you're getting into that, we've got our special sauce. How could you ever possibly want to share that with somebody else? Which actually reminds me of a good story related to AQAV and becoming an education partner for AQAV, right? Giving back to the industry, giving back knowledge that, might have been a differentiator or set us apart from others who maybe weren't practicing that particular standard. But it comes back to what you just said, which is, man, we're all in this together. We're all in this industry together, and we all have a responsibility to try to help each other be as successful as possible. Because, focused on just the self is an exercise in being as absolutely small as you possibly can be, right? The power comes in
No kidding.
lifting everybody up. There's a good quote, and I can't remember it, so I'll probably mess it up, right? Like everybody rises with the tide or floats higher together. See, I'm totally
Sure.
destroying it, but
I'm with it. No, that's beautiful.
oh yeah, thanks. I'll follow back up with the actual quote there, but it's really smart and relevant right now, I can assure you. Um, uh, you reminded me of another thing though, which is another reason why I actually wanted to become a teacher because I found self-serving that one of the best ways to cement knowledge within yourself was to teach it to others,
Yes.
which is another humbling experience because one of the things that I've learned, and I'm sure you've learned, and we've learned this together in some of the classes that we've taught together, people don't learn the same way.
No.
People don't learn the same way. They don't learn the same way. They don't learn the same way that you do. And, what's your job as a teacher? What's your number one job as a teacher? I'm going to ask it. In your opinion, what's your number one job as a teacher?
I mean,
Number one. Can only be one,
help people learn, right?
right?
Yeah.
And learning is actually consuming the information in a meaningful way that sticks with them,
Yes.
right? You can,
That's it. It's not just conveying the information. It's not TV
exactly.
broadcast. It is helping them digest that information.
And it requires tuning yourself to the varying different learning styles that exist out there, which
Yes.
kind of forces you to come at things from multiple different angles. And when you come at the same concept from multiple different angles, it really sets deep within you and you get a really deep understanding of that particular concept. So that is another one of the, for me, reasons I absolutely love teaching is
Yeah.
if I can find that spark moment, if I can give somebody a little bit of inspiration that they can take home and be better in whatever it is that they're doing, and that's the win right there. But it's also about, reinforcing and learning, which you hit on. The years, right? I still think that we learn more from our from our students and our participants than they learn from us.
Easy. Easy.
Hands down.
Yeah. I think there's one more piece that we didn't touch on in terms of AV leadership, and I think it's not being afraid of taking ownership. And to me, that takes a special type of person, and you have to be willing to take that leap, take that ownership. And we honestly we've been skirting around it. I guess we've been talking about being vulnerable and humble and not being scared to say yes. I'll do that. Yes, I'll figure out how to run a project management. Um, but now your butt's on the line. And I don't know that people are ever comfortable with that, but they're willing to get out there and do it. And that, it's not like being brave isn't the absence of fear. It's being able to do what you're supposed to do despite fear. And I think leaders need an element of that.
The fear of failure.
Yeah.
The fear of failure has got to be one of the most dogged fears that exist out there. You're hitting on it, right? What's
Yeah.
one of the reasons that, you know, some people don't take ownership or don't take that leap? Because we don't want to fail. I don't want to fall on my face in front of everybody else, right? And depending on your, your upbringing, your particular situation, your fear of failure might be absolutely debilitating.
Yeah.
You're
Overwhelming. Yeah.
not going to take that step because of a fear of failure,
Yeah.
which I think is another really big part of leadership is a willingness to fail and actually be okay with and honest with and vulnerable with others about it, because again, it's all about recognizing you're just a little blue dot
That's it.
and we're all connected. We're all part of the same
Yeah.
continuum, right? Just because you're responsible for a group of people or you're a leader doesn't make you any different than the
Yeah.
next person. And one of the things that for me just differentiates between a leader or somebody who doesn't lead is that willingness to fail. Ownership is a concept that I would love to talk a little bit more about and dig into here in our last few minutes, because it speaks to leadership at all levels, right? People think
Yes.
leaders are just the guy driving the ship or the one that's the manager over a team. And I think it's our responsibility to kind of, like our buddy Jocko says, break that paradigm down. But again, it comes back to vulnerability and getting over that fear of failure, being willing to fail, pushing yourself, growing yourself, trying something new, right? Like riding a bike, right? Didn't we all fall off the bike? I fell off the bike a lot, a lot.
Same.
It
Same.
explain it explains a lot. I know. I hit my head a lot. Fell off the bike a lot. But if you want to ride that bike, you have to keep getting back on that thing and keep trying to learn and trying to pedal, right?
Yeah.
Got to fail.
Yeah. And that's personal, right? There needs to be some personal responsibility, but you also have to be a part of a culture that doesn't destroy you if you fail. And that was one of my favorite stories, growing up with my dad, is that um, he had some new programmer who happened to be my cousin, and he was working on this program for however many weeks and days, and getting it just right, and the power to the computer failed. It rebooted, got the blue screen of death way before there was a blue screen of death, but like done, and lost however many thousands of man hours, and he
Oh,
had to start again. And probably cost the company, I think the number was $10,000. It cost the company $10,000. My the guy who lost the program came in shaking his head. It's like, I can't believe I did this. I am so sorry. I'll pack up my things. And Mario, being Mario, is like, no, go back to it. We just made you $10,000 smarter. Do you think I'm going to let you go now? You are so much more valuable. I bet you're never going to do that again. And that's culture, right? And not understanding that failure is going to happen, understanding that if we have a great strong team, we're all in together, we're all pushing for the same thing, and so no one fails on purpose. No one's trying to be a saboteur or anything like that. And if your culture allows you to fail, um, I'm not saying you should do it often, but if you're not scared of it, and if it's not overwhelming and it's not debilitating, and you try things, some are going to stick, and then you're going to be the hero. That again, that's leadership. And I don't know that you ever get comfortable with failure, because failure sucks, like sucks hard.
nobody wants to kick their own ass.
Yeah, exactly, but you got to be somewhat comfortable with that discomfort, and you have to learn to live with it, right?
Man, I think you just answered a pretty big question there. The question, how do you grow AV leaders? Because there's not just one question. There's just not just one
Mhm.
answer to that question, but I think you just answered it. You gave another answer to it, which is you've got to create an environment
Yes.
that those leaders can thrive in, right?
Yes.
And leaders are built on failure. That's a funny thing to say, right? But it's true. So many people look at leaders and they're like, wow, that guy or that gal, she just is amazing. She must never make any mistakes. And you're wrong.
Eggs. That's
You're completely and totally wrong with thinking that, right? The only difference between that guy or that gal and you is that they have failed more times than they have succeeded
exactly.
and have continued to get back up and go at it again until they succeeded, right? That is such a huge element. And to create to create that environment that promotes that type of learning, that
Yeah.
promotes that type of growth, that's how you start to build leaders at all levels within your organization. That's a huge point.
Yeah.
And why is it that AV seems to be such a family affair back on the East Coast, man?
It's how we roll, right? It's our family. It's Cosa Nostra. No, I'm just kidding. It is what it is, right?
Uh,
Well, and there's trust involved, right? I
yep.
mean,
Keep it
so
in the family. You about to go
keep
again?
it. Hey,
I mean, how young were you when you were first exposed to commercial AV?
oh,
And I know that he should be retired now, so we shouldn't have any liability, but I know that he had you working for nothing before you were even supposed to be working.
I was I was 16 years old building racks for a large financial institution in a bee-infested garage of my future partner when I was 16. Yeah, that was good.
Isn't there pictures of you sub double digits though, running around equipment racks and being
Oh
around
yeah.
all that stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Like that's they were at Christmas parties and yes.
You know, it's
Oh,
funny.
that introduced to commercial AV. Yeah. No, 2 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Dad had you soldering
I was that
XLR
annoying kid.
connectors.
Yep. Yep. Playing with the that pallet jack, riding that around. That was the best thing ever.
You know, it's funny. One of the questions I always like to ask people when I get an opportunity to interview someone is their AV origin story. And, you know, because most people don't go looking for AV.
No,
And then there's Jim Maltese, who was literally born into it, like couldn't avoid it if he wanted to.
I tried.
You did
I,
try.
I tried to avoid it. I tried to avoid it, but it called me.
It sucked you back in. It sucked you back in.
Thought I was out, man. I was gonna make prosthetics.
Prosthetics, huh?
Yes.
Hmm.
Anyway, but so how do you grow successful AV leaders? We heard love of learning, love of teaching, standing on shoulders of giants, getting out of your silo, sharing, being somewhat comfortable to fail and willing to take that ownership.
Certainly not letting that fear of failure stop you from taking the step.
Yes.
Vulnerability, humility,
Vulnerability and humility.
huge, huge. Surround yourself with people, right? This is old. This is
Yes.
old adage stuff. Surround yourself with people that you want to be like. If you've got a leader in your life that you've got respect for, build a relationship with them.
Yep.
Ask them. They will inevitably be happy to share with you all of their wonderful failures along the path,
Yes.
right? They'll also share all their wonderful successes, and that's part of it. But mentoring, right? A mentoring type relationship. I know for me, you know, I've got a list of people, and I mentioned it already, but I've got a list of people that there's no way I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for those people being in my life. And me seeking their knowledge and seeking their friendship and being willing to listen and learn.
Yeah. And maybe there's one more thing that I always found interesting, but being comfortable with surrounding yourself with people who are better at things than you are,
Whew,
right? Because I
that's a
feel like
big
a
one.
lot of people in
Yeah.
AV, because it starts with a lot of small mom and pop shops, the leaders like to be smartest in the room, best in the room, or whatever. But a true leader will want that that team of just ninjas and killers that that are going to push them, push the team, and they're not going to be threatened by having someone who's a little bit more seasoned in certain aspects of it.
Jim, wow, that good one. Good. I can't believe we didn't come up with that a little bit earlier in the conversation because especially in AV, such a technical trade, so many technical people, and I've met so many technical people that like to keep that stuff real
I know,
close,
I
right?
know.
They want to protect it and want to be the smartest guy in the room from a tech perspective. To your point, like embracing leadership is embracing the idea that you've got to achieve great leadership, you've got your job is now no longer being the subject matter expert over a particular discipline, right? It's help.
Leading them.
Exactly. Well, and what does that mean? It means helping those people achieve their greatest potential.
Yeah.
That's your job now. Your job now. I remember, one more little item here. When I was first starting to become an executive within the company, I was really uncomfortable with it. I was uncomfortable with the idea of it, didn't see myself that way, and a lot of it had to do with just trying to reduce ego, right? Ego is the killer. Stay humble. Don't like thinking of myself at the top of an organization. And I
Hmm.
had I had a leadership coach because of course, what's my MO? Oh, you want me to be a leader? I need to go learn how to be a leader, right? I need to go take some classes. I need to get some coaching, right? And I did that. I went and got some coaching. And there was a really impactful moment where they said, as a leader, take that org chart, and they flipped my org chart upside down. So now my box was on the bottom and everybody else's boxes were above mine. And they said to me, they said, your job as a leader is to make sure that every single one of these people have the tools that they need to be the most successful versions of themselves. Your job as a leader is not to be at the top charging forward, leading the path. Your job as a leader is to be supporting every one of your people. And as soon as I saw that org chart upside down, I was like, okay, I'm in. So, it's funny here, so
Yeah.
long into the episode, you asked me, when was that moment? That might have been the moment for me where I was
Interesting.
like, okay, yeah, no, I'm willing to do this because if it means that I get to focus my time and energy on bringing the best out of everyone and giving them the tools that they need to be successful, creating the environment that they need to be successful,
Yes.
making sure they're not afraid to fail and push the initiative forward, I could do that. I'm in on that role.
Awesome. I believe I believe we end there. That is I feel good about that.
Well, as always, my friend, I love love getting to talk with you, love getting to explore ideas and all these
Yeah.
wonderful little brown background chats that we've been having.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Any parting words? Any other summaries from the great Jim Maltese?
No summers. I would say to our audience, if you're enjoying our chats, if you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe. It would help us out a lot. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for the last words, man.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jim. And my last comment, I think, is just a big thank you to all the people that have come before us. A big thank you to all the leaders out there, failing fast and learning from those mistakes and creating environments and taking ownership and providing opportunities for other leaders to come up in the world. All the mentors that were in my path, big shout out along the way. It has been an incredible journey, and like most leaders would say, it's our responsibility to provide that opportunity for those coming behind us and coming up through the ranks. So thank you, Jim, for the time. Thank you, listeners, and we'll see you in a month, couple weeks, month.
Yep, 4 weeks.
All right.
4 weeks.
See you later, everybody.
Take care, y'all.